Hello, mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this launch event for GCS 10, the 10th annual edition of the Global Consumer Study by Remark here in Paris, and also a very warm welcome to everyone joining us virtually from all over the place. My name is Iona Bain, and I am a writer and broadcaster based in the UK who started a website called Young Money Blog 12 years ago. Today, I write and talk about financial issues affecting the whole of society, but particularly young people. So I was really delighted to be asked to chair this expert panel, which will discuss the findings of this genuinely fascinating study, which delves into the attitudes and lifestyles of more than 12,000 millennials and Gen Z consumers from around the world. Now, this year's study exclusively focuses on Gen Z and millennial demographics, and this approach was taken for two reasons. Firstly, previous surveys have showed that the younger generations have the lowest financial and insurance literacy, so it was felt that these demographics demanded particular attention. And secondly, these young consumers are the future, and they will become a key market for insurers, if they're not already. So it's important to think about future-proofing and to learn more about what young people want from their insurance experience. So before I get the panel to introduce themselves, I'd like to remind everyone that we'll have 15 minutes for questions after our 30-minute discussion. So please get thinking about the kind of questions that you would like to put to our panelists. Now, I would like to introduce our three experts, or rather get them to introduce themselves, starting with David.
Thanks, Iona. Hi, I'm David. I'm the Chief Digital and Innovation Officer for Life and Health at SCOR. I'm a millennial. I think that's important for this. I have two kids in Generation Alpha, which I just learned as a new generation. My key focus is really to leveraging knowledge and technology to support our clients in their digital solution journey, but also to make sure that we create the best customer and consumer journey.
Thanks, David. Hi, my name is Nadia. I'm the CEO of Remark International, SCOR's digital solution providers. I've been involved with a global consumer study for the last 10 years now, and I'm not a millennial, but I will stop there. And so very much looking forward to sharing the observations and the key findings of a global consumer study with everyone present here and everyone online.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So I'm Antoine Lee. I'm the Chief Data Science Officer at SCOR. I've been following and really contributing to the transformation using data and AI within the insurance industry for almost 10 years now.
Super. Well, let's start with you, Na. It would be fantastic if you could give us an overview of the GCS, how it started, the insights and data that we've gained over the last decade, and why this year's report is focused on millennials and Gen Z. I touched on some of those reasons, but if you could expand on them, that would be great.
Okay, great. Thanks, Iona. You know, in 2014, when we started this journey, it really occurred to us in the insurance industry, there's been a lot of research about product risk, but it's all done by experts within the industry. And this industry is full of experts, right? The data scientists, the actuaries, the underwriters. What we realized, we rarely actually ask consumers what they actually want, how they purchase, what they want to purchase, what channel they want to purchase, what they're looking for in terms of the insurance journey. That's why we started this study. Actually, it's the #1 in the industry, and you know, one thing leads to another. Decade later, we have accumulated a huge amount of insights and also developed the trend, especially over pandemics. The reason why this year we zoomed into millennials and the Gen Z, as you said, they represent the future, and they also affected very severely because of the pandemic, you know, financially, health-wise, and any aspect. So we like to dedicate the issue for the consumers of the future and what the key matters in their mind when they're looking for insurance.
Something that really jumped out at me from the report was that the younger generations say they're confident about their insurance knowledge, and more than half say they have a good understanding of insurance products. But is that confidence justified?
Sure. Well, if you look at the insurance literacy score, it's a 5.87 out of 10. That's probably about right. You know, so 50% people say they have a good knowledge. So the score probably demonstrate that. But on the flip side, 50% of them say they don't really know insurance very well. And we know that from previous year's study and this year's study, also between millennials and Gen Z, also proved that the younger generation they are, the lower insurance literacy they get. That means there's a big gap in terms of millennials, Gen Z in terms of Gen X and baby boomers. But the good news is 77% people are saying they are ready to get education from insurance industry about insurance at risk. I think it's a great opportunity for further engagement from people like us. Yeah.
And what's really interesting is that the study has a way of actually measuring what the insurance knowledge is of the people who take part. So you can see what that gap is between what they think they know and what they actually know. But yes, absolutely, as you were mentioning there, the younger generations are interested in insurance, and the way that they're buying insurance, I think, is surprisingly traditional. So the report found that more would prefer a one-to-one call with an agent if they want to learn about insurance, and recommendations from family and friends is a huge driver of young people's insurance purchases. But what was the number one driver of insurance purchases, and why do you think that's the case?
So intuitively, we thought those people are digital generations. They're going to buy insurance online, or they're going to get YouTube to teach them how to buy insurance. But the number one trigger for insurance purchase is a recommendation from family and friends. And that's very interesting, right? Yeah, there are digital solutions, digital generations. I'm talking about all you lots here, there's lots of you young people here, but still they value greatly about the relationship, family, and they want that human touch. When it comes to things really important, peace of mind, trust, and also planning for the financial future. So it's an important insight to bear in mind.
And what about online reviews? What's the role that they play in young people's decision-making around insurance?
Exactly. So I mean, I'll probably, David, have something to say about that. But this year, for the first time in the last 10 years, the online review, a good online review was scored the number one factor over pricing. Okay. Previous 9 years, number one factor, why you buy insurance, what you're looking for, always price, cheap price. This year, it's a good online review. I think it's pretty telling and an exciting turning point, I think. I think David.
I mean, just maybe to add, because you started off to say it's kind of traditional in the way that you interpreted the data. I would say traditional in the way of the human touch, and kind of we've seen the advisor, we've seen kind of family and friends being one of the key reasons for purchase. But at the same time, we see that from a digital community perspective, and the younger generations are much more linked to digital communities, this review is extremely important for them as well. So kind of getting the instant valuation, customer insights. And I was reading it, I wasn't really thinking about it the same way, but when I think for my personal way, the way I kind of purchase services, etc. I mean, you look at the price, but then you don't take the cheapest with the one-star review because you kind of think there's something suspicious. So I think it does make sense. And then if you combine this a bit with the digital native elements, so what do they want? They want instant convenience in the process. They want it digitally to support it. So I don't think it's that traditional.
That's interesting. So younger consumers are still looking for that human connection and that solid reputation, but they are going online to find it. I think that's really fascinating. Antoine, I mean, do you feel that word of mouth, online reviews, these sorts of things matter more than price to younger consumers?
Yes and no, it really depends. So I would just mention the difference potentially between cultures and depending on the country when you look at. Definitely we have a price interest in more traditional countries like France, Germany, Ireland, Italy. It's quite striking because the number one factor is definitely price over the review. But there's definitely from a younger generation, Gen Z, a strong interest allocated to actually the review as well. So it's a kind of like strange, and to be honest, when I look at the results and the numbers, I was like, but personally myself, I would first put price, and then, of course, depending on the price, as David mentioned, you always have this suspicion about, okay, this is the cheapest, but is it really qualitative product? So, and when you dig into the numbers, actually, you find out those similar things, but it's really a bias coming from also the culture. So I'm living in France, so I had this prior. But when you look compared to the UK, for instance, or Asian country, it's totally the opposite. So actually, the review just becomes really number one, much more higher rates in terms of ranking than the price. So it's pretty funny.
That's fascinating. It just goes to show how much value this study has in terms of taking in all those different markets and seeing all those differences. I mean, David, how does that influence insurers in terms of how they market to these younger consumers? Do they need to rethink the way that they target that younger market and focus on the quality of the reputation that you cultivate online rather than just bombarding them with advertisements on social media, for instance?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think if you think about the journey, what they want is obviously the human touch, as we said, but they want it digitally supported. So the digitally supported really also is a double-edged sword somehow for insurers. So you have to have the customer journey as seamless as possible, and you get the instant kind of online feedback. So you want more touch point as an insurer. I think that's the key point. We normally have one key touch point. It's a purchase. What we're aiming for is more touch points. But the moment the online reviews has got such an impact, right? You really need to be careful of how many touch points you really want to create. So that's I think from a journey perspective. And then I think there's secondly the element that you mentioned is really around this. How do we take the quality forward, right? So it's really about the affordability. So price is still an important factor. So you need to kind of have something that you can industrialize. You have to personalize it, but you also make it scalable, because otherwise it's not affordable and you can't kind of sell it. So, and that's, I think, where technology really will help us in the future to make this.
It's about striking that balance between making the experience as convenient as possible without compromising on that human touch. Well, moving on to the demand for embedded insurance and young people's willingness to share their data. This was a huge theme from the study this year. I want to come to you, Antoine, because I'm really interested in the finding from the study, which shows that young people say they're willing to share their data. But we're talking about some very personal information here. For instance, medical health records, mental health history. Do young people really want to share this information to get lower insurance costs? And if so, what do you think has allowed them to overcome that unease that older people have tended to have about sharing their data in that way?
I think it's just to answer a little bit the questions. So last year, for instance, during the GCS, it was also a question that was asked about are the people open and kind just to share the data? And if I remember well, it was more than 2/3 of the respondents who actually said yes, but with clear visibility about what it brings in terms of value added. So, and this was independent from the age of the respondents. But I think for the younger generation, since they are more used to use digital services, I think it strikes even more, because if they found value in the service they use, if it is really convenient, useful, easy to use, it can probably explain also why younger generation are more and more open, let's say, just to use the application this way. Because it's convenient and just they don't have just to go through a painful process, for instance.
So they know that it works for them, and that's why they're much more comfortable with it. Now, what are your thoughts on this particular area?
I think there's a couple of things in addition to Anton just highlighted. Because with young people, they are the digital generation. Especially Gen Z, they're born after iPod, iPad was invented. So for this digital things, very intuitive to them. So the embedding insurance into this as they go about daily life, when they share a bike, when they call a Uber, or when they buy something, just having insurance on the back of that. For them, just like natural, instinctively. I think let's go back to the great customer experience, right? If people even don't realize they are buying insurance, that's exactly what they what we want for them and for us as well, right? So, yeah.
So it does seem that embedded insurance has got a huge amount of potential, but David, there are obviously dangers here. How do we ensure that it's done in an open, transparent way that everybody feels comfortable with?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think, I mean, the obvious one is to have the bare minimum, right? So to kind of stick to the rules, regulations that are there by every jurisdiction. I think then when it comes to transparency, and a bit what Antoine touched on, is really what value do they get from it? And that comes out very strongly of the GCS. Like, they really want to understand what they get for the sharing of the data. And even there, I would say that's something that is almost required for the sharing of the data. But then if you read through some of the other questions, kind of interesting, you could do much more as an insurer. You could be proactively leverage the data that you get. So, for example, I think it was more than 70% who actually want to understand better from the data that they share, what's the risk of getting a certain illness? Or if you think about the medical underwriting, we have such a huge diversity of data that we get, but we never share back of what we see and kind of can leverage this from both an educational perspective, but also from a health and wellness journey. So I think there's some elements for us where we can leverage this even more.
Yeah, that connection with health and wellness, I feel like that's a theme that's going to come up again and again in future studies, as well as the younger generations seem much more focused on this whole area, particularly in terms of their mental health. But moving on to telematics and solutions for property and casualty insurance. When I think of telematics, I think of my domestic market, which is the UK, where car insurance now is extremely expensive. And you would think that in that environment, telematics insurance, we call it black box insurance, would be universally adopted, incredibly popular, but it's far from that at the moment. So I'm really interested to kind of understand just how popular it is elsewhere now. I think you can probably give us a kind of insight into what this study showed about appetite for telematics insurance.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. I know if we think people want to reduce their premium down, you thought they should adopt telematics. And the study shows they are open to that, but the experience is quite contrary to that. I think the bottom line is what kind of telematics. You know, when we really kind of really drill down to that, yes, people like to get discounts for good driving behavior. I think in the report this year, last year, we asked people, you know, do you think you are better than average driver? 90% people said they are better than average. So by mathematical default, that's not right.
We'd never have any accidents if that was true. So I think people are possibly a bit confident there.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of positive bias or confidence in the driving. So there's a disappointment that they're not getting the discount they thought they deserve. That's number one. And number two, that's probably go back to the consumer experience aspect. You know, no one wants a nagging, you know, sort of a nanny sitting behind you telling you what you're doing wrong. You break your heart, you stop, you do this, do that. I think we have to think of what kind of telematics we should give to people, how to genuinely improve people's driving behavior without being annoying in the customer experience side.
Well, this is the thing, the installation of a black box just seems like a big hassle for lots of people that they just don't want to have. And if they're worried that it's going to, you know, mess up their car, then they're even more reluctant. Antoine, there are clear generational and cultural differences as well, you know, when it comes to whether younger people are willing to sign up to this type of insurance, which reflects, you know, how they actually go about their lives. You were talking about it before. Have you got more insights on that front that you can share with us?
From insurance perspective or from my perspective?
Both.
So I think it's worth just to mention actually on both sides, because there is the appetite of young generation actually to go through those projects. We mentioned digital experience, for instance, which is something perhaps younger generation are more sensitive to. But there's also this kind of market, also context, market prices. So yes, it's expensive products, but it's also good to mention that young drivers are paying always more, even for the more traditional products in motor products. So when you buy car insurance, if you are between 20 and 30 years old, you always have a higher price than the driver who is even older, even with less experience of driving. So this is just facts, it's statistics, and that could also explain why potentially when we look at telematics products in different markets, especially in Europe, most of the users are mostly young, young drivers. In the UK, we got small adoption, much more than in France or in Germany. But still, when we look at those more traditional countries, it's always young generation that are targeted because the margins and prices are much higher. So this is where really we can have savings on telematic products. So the incentive is much higher also. So it's a kind of like win-win situation for young drivers. That could explain why young generation are more sensitive. And then when you bought your insurance, then it's unlikely that you're going to change it over time. So that could also explain why we are seeing more and more young generation adopting telematics products, even if it's slow adoption.
So it's being adopted slowly, but one to watch for sure. Let's move on to social media use, because this was absolutely fascinating. It's a topic that I'm very exercised about. Na, we've seen from this study that actually social media is a huge source of stress for young people. There does seem to be a correlation between levels of usage and levels of stress. The more you check social media, the more likely you are to feel always or often stressed. And it's clear that this could have a very negative impact on young people's financial decision making. What do you think that impact could be? And what do you think we need to keep in mind about this whole subject?
Sure. I think you highlight one of the key findings of this report. As David mentioned just now, the digital is such a double-edged sword. On one level, we know importance of good online review. We see people's openness in sharing data. Another level, if you look at a report, there's a direct linear correlation between the frequency of your check social media and the level of stress people are experiencing. Yet you ask people the question, which we did in the report, do you believe social media have a negative impact on your mental health? Only 24% people say yes. So this, we all know that mental health, starting from lack of self-awareness, understanding you're actually stressed and then not doing anything about it. And when we look at the source of stress, the financial is a biggest source of stress for the young generation. So what that actually means for insurance industry, it really means we need to be aware. Whereas digital have lots of positives, we really have to pay attention to the negative and to the impact on people's mental health. For instance, we shouldn't be shaming people for lacking financial resources, not buying the most expensive insurance they should compare with their peers. We're actually using what they're saying. They want more education, they want more understanding. Can we use in the social media and digital channel in the right way, channel them into, okay, insurance does create a peace of mind for me, and actually it's a good thing for that to tackle my stress because of financial issues. I think as an industry, we just need to be aware.
That's interesting. David, do you agree with that we can't shun social media? It's a part of our lives now. We have to figure out how we can use it in a way that benefits young people's financial decision making.
No, absolutely. And what came out of the study, and going back to health and wellness, interestingly in that respect, because one of the key resolutions from young people actually to deal with the stress was actually physical activity. So I think it was over 46% saying that health and wellness activity helps to deal with the stress. So obviously you have to kind of balance that again, because it's a digital tool to kind of solve a digital issue at the same time. I think the second dimension might be on the mental health support, mental therapy. Also there, I think digital solutions could be actually a solution for digital or social media impacted stress release. So I think that's actually where we have to play, and also kind of think about this holistic journey that we touched upon at the beginning. It's really about not just the few touch points that we had in the past, but really thinking about this holistically.
Absolutely. And when it comes to mental health, you're right that online therapy could be a real game changer in terms of making therapy more affordable for people who really need it. But coming on to really the last section of our conversation, where I just want to really zoom back and look at how Millennial and Gen Z consumers differ from the older generations, and how we design those really relevant solutions for them. Coming back to you, David, again, young people, they want to save money. Yes, they want a good experience as well. I mean, does this bode well in terms of their kind of receptiveness to insurance and the ability to be able to market to price-conscious young consumers?
I do think so, because like we said, price is important. I mean, the online review took over, but price is still important. We also kind of understood that it's most popular to get a discount in terms of premiums, right? So there's the connection. And then the third piece, we kind of understood that financial stress is the most important element that we have to deal with. So in that respect, I think really we have to help the generation. And for them, it's of vital importance to kind of have this health and wellness journey to kind of live a healthier, younger lifestyle. And I think that's where we can kind of build insurance solution that supports them in their journey. But also kind of we move beyond the, I would say, traditional insurance experience.
And Antoine, I think young people see themselves as being invincible. I don't know if you're invincible. I know recently I've certainly realised I'm not invincible, far from it. And with that kind of realisation, on a more serious note, with younger people taking their mental health more seriously and so on, do you think that's making younger people more receptive to life and health insurance?
Yeah, I think so, and I think also that pandemic really also stressed that, and perhaps so I've been teaching to university, and I really could notice that like mental health is something that we were never used to mention as teacher between teacher and students, and with the pandemic, it's something that conversation I could have with some students about pathological mental health situation. It kind of showed that actually it's something that really now people, young people are more kind just to speak about. So at least they are aware that this is important. Are they more open then just to have insurance product related to that? I'm not that sure. Personally, this is my feeling. But at least they know that it's an important topic and they are really open just to use and be helped by using potentially digital solution just to measure their mental health, having some kind of touch point, even remotely. And so, yeah, I think that people are more kind to speak about it. So perhaps this is why it reflects this sensation that this is not crazy young generation. They are more open to those topics,
Yeah, so just because we've seen that shift doesn't mean they're going to immediately buy insurance. The hard work needs to be done to design those solutions that are going to appeal to those markets. And now, you know, Antoine just touched on the pandemic. There's been a clear shift in young people's mindsets since the pandemic. Can you just briefly unpack that for us, what the study showed us about that?
Sure. I think one of the key things that Antoine already highlighted, I think you mentioned as well, is this consciousness of health and importance of health, and also willingness of adopting health and wellness app, you know, as a tool and engagement to get help and get healthy. I think over 66% people saying they are very open to adopting the health and wellness app and also getting tips of you know, how to lead a more healthy and a more holistic life about it.
It's a remarkably high figure considering the fact that we are going through a lot of financial problems in the UK. That's true of many different countries. The fact that younger people are still open to paying extra for products in that way is encouraging, and it is because of that focus on health and wellness, as you say.
Exactly.
David, are there examples of insurers, or can you talk broadly about success stories of insurers, you know, capitalising on the differences between the generations, tapping into that younger market, and how could insurers do better in this area?
I mean, overall, yes, there's certainly some really good examples. Let me clarify one thing that we also see from study. I think insurers do very well on the traditional touch points.
Yes.
So it's more like how do we bring insurers to kind of react to the different journey. And in that respect, we've seen that it's a huge potential on the education piece, on the insurance literacy that we will touch upon. And it's like, I think it's around 25% of the people who don't buy insurance is really because they don't understand the cover. So there's a huge potential. And if you combine this with the potential of Generation Z itself, who is kind of more than half of them are first-time buyers of kind of insurance. So there's huge potential. And there's some really good examples in terms of especially health and wellness journey that we've seen, especially in South Asia. Some of the examples where insurers kind of have fully adapted to the whole lifestyle, embedding an app, embedding the literacy, education piece, and also events. So,
cause for hope then. Excellent. Well, that seems like a good point to move on to our Q&A. If you've got a question in the room, put your hand up and one of our lovely assistants will come to you with a microphone. So have a think about any questions that you want to ask. In the meantime, I do have some online questions for you guys. First up, will the online sales completely take over offline sales in the next 10 years, or will there always be the need for a human touch? Who wants to take this on?
I'm happy to take that on. I think that's been a constant question over the years, and in fact, it's one of the key considerations we like to address this kind of question in our survey. But over and over the years, it's been consistent. Whereas people value the convenience and immediacy of digital channel, you can't do without that human touch. And then you see this year's survey from Millennial and Gen Z, they still, number one trigger for them to buy insurance, the family, friends, and even when they want to get an insurance education, the number one channel is a one-to-one chat with a financial advisor or talk to family friends who know what they're talking about. I think we should never lose sight of the human touch. And digital is enabling tools for that human touch.
Interesting. We have a couple of questions around, online advertising and AI. Firstly, what impact would the trends that we've been seeing in the study likely have on web-based advertising in the future? It's quite an interesting question. Who wants to take that one on?
Looking at me.
Go on.
I mean, I have to start, and I think it just very brief. It just go back to the digital is double-edged sword. Let's not lose sight of that. No one wants to be bombarded with lots of advertisement. It does the opposite.
One thing that we discussed when we had a chat before this session today is that young people do actually take their finances seriously. So perhaps consuming that kind of financial content alongside more fun, entertaining, trivial stuff might not be the way to go. And let's face it, insurance is an important product that you've got to take your time in terms of making the decision over, because if you make a mistake, then that could have big consequences.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's a tricky one. And then if reviews are important, if online reviews are important, should the insurance industry leverage generative AI to deliver greater customer service? So this question is about whether AI can play a role in greater customer service.
The answer is yes.
Yes.
But, right? So I mean, that's always back to the double-edged sword. I think it's a consistent journey. Building a digital brand, I think, is quite important to kind of leverage this, making sure that your customer journey supports your online reviews. Perfect. Generative AI can be a super effective tool also in terms of scale. We talked about affordability, price is important. But at the same time, what Na was just mentioning, generative AI can create a whole lot of touch points in advertising and kind of make the whole journey even more unpleasant. So I think the way you kind of apply it is quite important.
Is it being used quite widely in the insurance industry at the moment, or is the uptake for it still quite slow based on what you know? Or what you know, Antoine?
It's pretty slow at the moment. We're still in the phase of exploration, to be fully honest, mostly because of the technical challenge and also the pricing model behind it. But definitely, when we look at the insurance industry, there are a lot of exploration and more use cases really around actually the interaction with the customer. So helping chatbot is not new, but it was a kind of like really rule-based chatbots. So GenAI is bringing more intelligence in the way we can actually interact with the end customers, so bringing more transparency on the product, helping the clients and the applicant just to understand what they are actually buying. So to that extent, this is what we currently see. But really in practice, in production, it's just starting to increase. Yeah.
Interesting. We're going beyond very basic chatbots then, which is good news. Are there any questions in the room? No? Well, we've got a few more online. Do you see a clear difference in digital adoption of financial services amongst Gen Z in emerging countries versus mature markets? Feels like perhaps both of you could speak to that point.
Yours.
Yeah, there's definitely, again, we come back to the cultural things and cultural sensitivity. I mentioned previously, for instance, in Asia, in China, I mean, when you look at Gen Z, they are much more sensitive to such a type of digital product and consumption, while in more traditional country, I'm not even sure I should use traditional, but definitely in some specific countries in Europe, it's totally the opposite way. So younger generation are more, let's say, they challenge more this type of thing. So there are definitely different areas with different, let's say, speed of such adoption. At least what.
Yeah, I mean, I echo that. But having said that, I think, you know, whereas for the summer emerging market, China, India, Mexico City really jumped to my mind. So their willingness of sharing data, their willingness to buy embedded insurance in the ride-sharing app, their willingness to, you know, buy the stackable insurance when they buy a coffee, when they swipe their credit card is extremely high. And on the other end of the spectrum, you know, a country like France, Germany, or Japan, the appetite is relatively minimal, like Anton just said. But having said that, so if you look at even countries like France and Germany, in the past, those are countries are like, no, I don't want to share data. No, you know, my privacy is super important. There is a big difference between Millennial and Gen Z. It's a 10% point difference between millennials who are happy to share data and Gen Z happy to share data. So given Gen Z is the future generation, you can see even the openness of these more conservative countries going to be shifting too. And
this is a really interesting question. How can insurers help when there's a cost of living crisis that's affecting young people who may not think about insurance in the first place? I mean, this is, it's always a challenge, isn't it? You know, marketing insurance to young people at the best of times, but we're not living in the best of times at the moment. So I guess there are no easy answers here. Certainly not any easy answers we could give within 5 minutes. But have any of you got a sense of how we can make this whole area easier for those young people to consider during these tough times?
Yeah. Maybe I can.
Yeah.
I think there's one element is really, I mean, we've seen this financial stress is a big element for the younger generation. But actually, insurance is actually already a solution to that, because protection and peace of mind to make sure you don't have to worry about those financial distress is one element. And then obviously there are, especially if you look at the lifetime journey, and when we talk about life and health insurance, it's really 30, 40 years. So there's solutions where I think about premium holidays or some kind of adaptability on the way we book the premium. I think there's multiple ways where we can actually help and make sure that we reduce the stress, but making sure that we also bring this protection and peace of mind.
We've had it's a very important question. It's very close to my heart to this. So this is where digital can be a game changer here. So if for the traditional intermediary channel, for agents or financial advisor to sell insurance to a person, the premium has to have a certain size. Otherwise, it doesn't justify that person's time and, you know, find the right customer. But digital does change the dynamics of that, because now we can really break down the premium size. Before, we probably need to sell a minimum, say, 1,000 annual premium GBP or euro policy. Now we can sell $1 worth policy, but let that accumulate over time. The previous efficiency, you will never get an agent to sell anything less than $500. But on the digital channel, it's possible now, as long as the experience is fantastic. I think it does help, you know, the affordability of young people.
Yeah, that's a fascinating development that's taken place in relatively recent times. One last chance, if anyone's got a question in the room, put your hand up, don't be shy. Otherwise, speak now, forever hold your peace. Okay, well, we'll just, I think we've got time maybe for one more question before we go on to our conclusions. Someone asked about what would a key takeaway from the study be, apart from embedded solutions, but I'm going to ask our panellists to give us their key takeaways in a moment. But again, to you, Naa, someone's asked what SCOR is doing to address the needs of younger generations of insurance consumers. Is there something that you're specifically developing or thinking about right now in response to this study?
absolutely. For this study, ultimately, we like to hear the voice of consumers and design the solution to address those voices solutions. So there's a full range of solutions we're currently looking for. For instance, people are asking for a great online experience and faster decisions and in exchange sharing data, etc. So some of the risk solution, the underwriting on the claim side is all designed to give consumers that real immediate, also great services so that they can get insurance they want at no time, no need to wait for 3 weeks for your application to be approved, no need to go to the hospital, get your blood testing, etc. So I mean, we can go on and on. But definitely that is very core to our belief and solutions we are developing.
Okay, right, let's watch this space then. I'm going to bring us on to our closing section now. And I mean, this was a little question that I sneaked in when we were doing our preparation for this session today. You know, financial literacy is a subject really close to my heart. I've spent the past 12 years trying to do my bit to address it in the UK. It's clear that it really matters. It's not so clear how we improve it. So I would love to get each of your thoughts on what we can do to improve not just financial literacy, but insurance literacy in particular, starting with you, Antoine.
I'm a little bit biased in this, but definitely leveraging on new technologies, using, we mentioned Gen AI, but what is really, let's say, why we are speaking so much about it is just because it has this capacity actually to summarizing and just to use also human readable terms that anyone can understand. So this is at least what I believe the most in, and this is what we have been working on at least as SCOR, just to make it happen. Yeah.
Super. Nah?
For us, you know, and for us as individuals and for consumers, we know to really help people's understanding, probably the lecture is not the most effective way. You know, we can put all the content of the world online, everything. You can't make people read it, right, to understand it. I think it's important for us to remember we are an industry that engaging with consumers, you know, and I think the previous year, the study addressed the best way for consumer to really understand insurance is at the claim stage, right? If I have to claim motor insurance, I have to claim hospital insurance, or if I claim some family member got ill or, you know, unfortunately passed away, that is a great education of importance, risk, and the uncertainty of the world. And so we need to pay attention on every single touch point, to David's point, whether it's a claim or whether people are making a call or people want to know everything. That's all our great opportunity to educate our consumers the importance of risk and the uncertainties of risk. You really don't know when the risk is going to happen, so it's best to protect beforehand.
Excellent point. David?
I think the key points were mentioned, so it's probably a combination of engaging, as we said. It's not just providing information, it's engaging that has a personalized angle, so we can leverage technology. And it's really also those sharing success stories. Sounds a bit strange because it can be even the claim story, but where actually protection has helped consumers through the hardest part of their life in that respect. So I think all those kind of combination of them is really how we should engage, how we should make sure that people really understand the protection. Yeah.
There's no one answer.
There's no one answer.
Lots of answers there, but bringing them together is what matters. So yes, if we could finish up by sharing the big takeaways from this report. I mean, I'll go first. The big takeaway for me is that the online world today, it's all consuming, it can be overwhelming, and it can be dangerous, but it can also present fantastic opportunities that weren't available to previous generations, actually, to educate ourselves, to get better informed, and to become more confident consumers. And I think that study brings that out very well. David, what was the big takeaway for you?
I think from an insurance perspective, and that was kind of the way I was looking at it, is really understanding the 3 areas that were highlighted to make sure that from a purchase perspective, from an online perspective, but also from a consumer perspective, that you focus on knowledge, well-being, brand affinity. I mean, that's very easy. In terms of understanding it, it's much harder to kind of build those solutions that then really resonate with the people.
Yeah, I agree. I have a similar sort of a takeaway as well. I feel our consumers are ahead as an industry. You know, you can tell our consumers are educated. They're very comfortable with digital channel. They want more education. They want great experience, and then they kind of almost seeking out for insurance protection. But insurance industry, on the other hand, is still a little bit analog, if you like. You know. So we do need to kind of hearing the voice of a consumer and catch up a bit, and moving from the analog world to the digital world, and to be holistic about our insurance offers. It's not just selling the health wellness, the great online experience, the great claim experience, great underwriting experience. You need to be where consumer want you to be. You know? So that would be my takeaway.
Yeah.
Mine is more like actually Gen Z is surprising. I would say that there is no one Gen Z first, which probably will lead us just to pay attention to the future and how it will change, because we have to pay attention to the diversity and changes, and so it can only be exciting for me. So.
Yeah, I think it was Alexander Dumas who said, all generalizations are useless, including this one. So on that note, I think that would be a great point to wrap things up. But please join me in thanking our fantastic panelists today.
Thank you.
And also, please join us for some drinks outside afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Iona. Thank you.